Right. So I think with everyone's permission, it's already 3:03. We could start a session today. Yeah. So a very good evening, everyone, and a very grand welcome to the webinar on moving from response to resilience through community-based DRR. So as we all know, disasters can strike at any time and have a very devastating impact on communities. While response efforts are important, it's equally important to focus on building resilience to mitigate the effects of the future disasters. Like we know that like policies, technological advances, summits, conferences are very crucial, but at the end of the day, it's the ground level community who are the first respondents, or they're the ones who are to be capacitated, and they're ones to be taken, they have to take the ownership to understand the risk, and basically they address the disaster. So I think it's very important that community based disaster risk reduction, we understand the importance of it. So, I mean, the importance of CBDRR is very visible from a lot of, examples that we see for, let's say, the Japan tsunami early warning system, where they incorporated CBDRR, and also Bangladesh, cyclone preparedness program, where they trained volunteers from the coastal communities. All these are, examples which demonstrates the importance of CBDRR and the importance of communities involvement. So in this context, actually, Sphere India Academy, in collaboration with Climate Action Resource Network, Asia Pacific, CARN-AP is organizing this event to better understand into the role of community-based disaster risk reduction in building the local resilience. So today in this session, we'll be discussing strategies and best practices for building resilience through CBDRR. And I really hope this event will provide valuable insights and open new perspectives and inspire collaborative actions towards a more resilient future. And once again, I would like to thank all of the participants and the speakers and panelists for joining us today, and I hope that it would be a very informative session. So before starting and giving it over to the moderator, I would like to give a brief introduction of all our speakers. So starting with Ms. Snigdha Chakraborty. She is a doctorate. She has a doctorate in social anthropology and has over 20 years of working experience in developmental fields, particularly country program management, emergency response and rehabilitation, disaster risk reduction resilience, women's empowerment and livelihood, community engagement and partnership. She has been with Catholic Relief Services, CRS, since 2004. She has worked as a technical advisor for disaster risk reduction and resilience in the Humanitarian Response Department, and has been deployed in several emergency response recovery programs, and was a program lead in the Nepal earthquake response and Bangladesh Rohingya response. Ma'am, we welcome you to the session. All right, so moving on, we have Mr. Tirtha Prasad Saikia, who is a frontline development activist associated in a wide range of community-based intervention and rooted in civil society sphere with his grassroots experience, passion, and visionary leadership. Mr. Tirtha is a director of Northeast Affected Area Development Society Needs, a local organization working with poor people in their struggle against humanitarian crisis, exploitation, and poverty based in the state of Assam in northeastern regions of India. So at Needs, he has worked for last 10 plus years in humanitarian response, in advocacy, disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and sustainable development among various communities in Assam. So, Sir Tirtha, we would like to welcome you also into the session. So moving on, we have our moderator, Ms. Chandrani Sinha. She is an independent multimedia journalist based in the Indian state of Assam. She has been reporting from Northeast India for the past 10 years. Her work on climate change in conflict zones, as well as other human interest stories, has been recognized on a variety of global platforms. She was one among the first to report on the infamous National Registration Certificate in the Indian state of Assam and how it affected the identity identity of Assam climate victims. She's currently contributes to both Indian and foreign media organizations, primarily on digital platforms such as BBC, Climate Home, Washington Post, and Vice US. We would like to welcome you also, Ms. Chandrani, to the event. And now I would like to hand it over to a moderator to continue with our session. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. You are audible.
Yeah. So we all know that how disasters and climate change has affected our life, especially communities staying in climate vulnerable areas. So in that way, if you see that the disaster risk every year is increasing, and the intensity of the disaster is also increasing. So in that way, we also need a lot of preparedness when it comes to community, from lower level to the higher level. And we have seen how community intervention can help reduce the disaster risk of various types of disaster. So we are already sitting in a zone which is a hotspot of disasters in different levels. Maybe it's a man-made, maybe it's climate-induced, maybe the geographical location and everything related to it. And so to understand it in a better way, we have our experts, and we'd like to start with Mr. Tirtho Saikia. He has been working in Assam, and he's the joint director of NEETS. May I ask you, sir, like, can you brief us about like what happens when a community face a disaster, and then the issues of then mitigations, and how they see themselves as vulnerable, and what kind of things should be introduced when it comes to disaster risk? You have been working in a climate vulnerable area like Assam.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, I would just like to check, am I audible to you all?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, moderator. It's a privilege and honor to be part of this webinar titled Moving from Response to Resilience Through Community-Based DRR. Thanks to Sphere India Academy for inviting and giving us this space to be part of. Basically, we are an organization working in the field of humanitarian response and advocacy, also disaster risk reduction in the floodplains of Assam for the last couple of years. And I have been associated for more than 10 years with different disaster risk resilience building program or community-based disaster risk management program in different part of Assam. And what we experience is that now the characteristics of disasters have been changing. The disasters have been unfolding everywhere. New areas are getting affected because of climate crisis and disaster. The intensity and the magnitude have been increased. The scale of loss and damage have been extremely skyrocketing in many parts of our region in the context of Assam flood. And we see how people are getting internally displaced because of disaster like flash flood, which is triggered by development-induced projects, extreme weather, and climate change impact. And these are some of the consequences we can see. And every time reaching out to community for humanitarian assistance, this is actually beyond our capacity. Being a civil society organization working in the field of humanitarian response, we many a times not in a position to respond to people to save their lives in time. So that's why I think the importance of CBDRR comes in, community-based disaster risk reduction. Why this is important? I think everyone know that community, they are the first responder in a crisis, and they have that vested interest and potentiality to react, to proactively work, to respond, to save their own people. I think CBDRR is an approach through which community can really work to mitigate their loss and damages that is coming out of a disaster situation like flood, like maybe other disasters in context of Assam, soil erosion, riverbank erosion, then maybe landslides. Also, of course, we cannot ignore the situation of northeast of India, which is we are in the zone 5. Then there are different layers of disaster caused by human beings. Sometimes this is caused by natural calamities. So there are areas how we can build resilience in communities. Some of the critical areas are in a disaster which affect a lot are food security and nutrition. We can consider what and hygiene wash, which is one of the critical part, and most of the people are getting affected, especially women, children, adolescent girls, uh, those who are chronically ill, then the old age communities and all. Then one of the critical areas is livelihood, which is really disrupted when a disaster strike communities, particularly farmers, then wage earner, then small petty trade vendor. Then there are areas like of education. There are areas like protection, communication, and transportation. So these are some of the areas. If we can really find out the coping capacities of the community, then I think we can enhance the additional values and techniques and tools to make them more resilient to face a disaster situation. So most of the experiences that we are earning is that we there are evolving good practices that is coming out from the community. Women, they have their own traditional skills and coping strategy to fight in a disaster situation. Then farmers, they have their own traditional mechanisms to work in a livelihood boosting areas. Then children also, they have their own by default coping strategy, as well as community at large. They have their own field-based experiences or age-old technologies and learnings to fight in a situation like disaster or climate crisis. So what we are experiencing is that people have these evolving technologies, tools, and traditional mechanisms. Just we need to identify. We need to scale it up and replicate in many areas. Suppose, for example, in Assam, there are tribal community. There is a particular tribal community called Mishing who live in raised houses that is built on stilt. So this tilt houses is purely flood resistant technology that is evolving from the community side. Even if there are massive flood situations, this is not getting submerged. The shelter is not getting submerged. The granaries are not getting submerged. And people can really adopt a situation of disaster and they can really stay inside their home with safety and protection. Then we see community, they have practices of raising the hand pumps beyond the highest flood level, which is again another best practices of accessing safe drinking water during flood. Whenever there are floods, all the sources are getting submerged, and this kind of raised hand pump, which is not getting submerged by flood, this really works well. And in disaster, when there is no other option, people can really utilize this sort of technologies that is coming out of their own traditional skills and knowledges from their old generations. So these are some of the good practices we can see in communities. Then grain bank, the raised grain bank is one of the concepts which have really have good potentiality to scale up and replicate in other communities. These raised granaries is never getting submerged because of massive flood situation or high flood situation, or there is a case of flash flood or submergence of water, and people can really store their food grains, food in those granaries. We can see how diversified livelihood practices and plan also help community to build resilience, because ultimate the economic crisis is one of the major output or major outcome and impact that is created by disaster situation. If we can really work on building their own capacities and capital by enhancing economic programs, that also help them to build their capacities, build their resources, which can really overcome vulnerabilities in a disaster situation. There are displaced communities who do not have land, who do not have proper assets, who do not have good amount of money to initiate economic activities. But if we can really diversify their skills, their programs, livelihood programs, if we can really link the market with them, then I think they will have opportunity and scope to work in generating incomes at their family level, which will build capacities as well as resources, and which will reduce vulnerability. Ultimately, this is vulnerability and capacity. If we can reduce the vulnerability, we have to enhance the people's capacity and resources. That's why their participation is very important and very vital to boost economy through different programs and plans. Then, of course, sorry, of course, sorry. This another community-based disaster preparedness which we have observed is that institutionalization of community, that is very important. We are talking that we are many a times we are talking about community is the first responder, but how we can equip them to be the first responder. So in this model, VDRF is a concept, Village Disaster Response Force. This concept can be materialized and this can be scaled up at the large community level. We can train them through different tools and techniques. This VDRF can be linked with civil defense, NDRF, SDRF, State Disaster Response Force, and we can train them on how they can be part of search and rescue operation, how they can be part of first aid practices, how they can be part of shelter management, humanitarian relief crisis and all. Then how they can be part of evacuation, how they can be involved in entire community participatory approach of responding to a crisis. They have their own capacities. Just we need to identify and we need to converse with government plan and programs. Now, in our context, being working in the front line of disaster response, we are linking these community groups with the SDRF, NDRF, and the civil defense who have that technical knowledge and skills and machineries. And these first responders, community-based organizations, they are actively working together in collaboration with them. Then secondly, building local leadership, that is important in communities. We need to really identify local leaders who can be actively part of this sort of exercise at the community level. We have to mobilize community and we have to institutionalize community, affected community into disaster mitigation institution. So this organizing affected community into disaster mitigation institution, this is a process, long-term process. And this process can be part of the resilient sustainable development practices from the community. So this effort will be really very collective and community, they will participate. The organization, they will also work, they will show their way, and in this process, sustainable practices will emerge. And these sustainable practices will reduce the loss and damages that is happening in community because of disaster, because of climate crisis and all. Then anticipatory action, another emerging issue. We have to build capacities of the community so that they can anticipate a disaster. They can anticipate, they can act and react before the crisis happen, which will enable them to reduce loss and damages, which will enable them to decrease the effect.
I want to interrupt in between, Mr. Sakya. What are the challenges you face on ground when you try to communicate with the communities? And give us an example of what are the challenges, and if you have any kind of example related to your field work.
Okay, you are asking in a disaster context or?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, in context of Assam, the major challenges is the communication and the transportation. So there is a massive disaster situation in Assam, like flood. People are really displaced. They're internally displaced and they are just fleeing to relief camps to get their shelter. And accordingly, in parallel, we see the challenges of food and nutrition, public health, especially the health problems of women and children. Then we see problems that is emerging because of water, which is drinking water. Then sanitation in the relief camps. This is a problem. It's a huge area actually. And sometimes we see being a non-state actor or the state actors, we are not in a position to respond properly, which actually increase the many a times morbidity among women and the children, also adolescent girls. And the transportation and the communication. In context of Assam flood, if we relate cases of 2022 flooding, almost around 29 to 30 districts have been affected very badly. And at that point of time, reaching out to everyone, that was a challenge, big challenge. We see a lot of islands getting submerged because of flood. We see a lot of interior village getting submerged. We see challenges emerging, new challenges emerging in the foothills, where people were affected because of development-induced projects like river dam. When the dam was releasing water, people were really in a situation where they are not in a position to respond at their own side. So reaching out to those people, communicating to those people, it's a challenge in context of Assam. So food security many a times, food insecurity many a times are emerging challenges. Then public health, particularly when we talk about water sanitation and hygiene, that's a problem. In relief camps, people do not have access to good water, safe water, clean drinking water, sanitation, and the proper hygiene practices. They do not have that access, or sort of they do not have that equipped resources to respond in their way. Then transportation and communication, then shelter. Shelter is one of the critical area, and many shelter actually get damages because of severe flood situation in rural areas. So these are some of the existing kind of people's experiences I have cited. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saikia. Coming to Dr. Snigdha Chakrabarti, I would like to ask you, like, what are the best practices involved in the community during disasters, and if we can replicate it and if it's happening, in what scale? Ma'am, can you hear me?
I think I'm getting a bit of a connection issue. Can you repeat your question? I could not hear it.
Yeah, coming to you, ma'am, like, I would like to ask you, what are the best practices involving communities in disasters, and if it's been replicated, and if it's been replicated, then what is the scale of replication?
Can you repeat it once again, please? I could not hear it properly.
So I would like to ask you, what is the best practices for involving communities in DRR and empowering them in reducing the risk in disaster?
Okay. Can I just quickly share my screen, and I can talk and responding to your question, so that it's better for me. Just to give me a second. Yep. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of good practices, I would start with how we as a humanitarian organization, or working on the response and resilience together, it requires a lot of human resource, mind shift, I would say, and capacity building, which means how we are working, what knowledge and skill sets that we are building amongst ourselves, actually, to make community, resilient in their own way. There is a bit of a background noise somewhere. So my first thing would be to share that a good, impactful training for all levels of staffs, management, including management of any organization, and the volunteers is very instrumental for a successful community-led disaster. I would not say community-based, because we need to give them the leadership. And when we say we need to give them, it's something like we are holding amongst ourselves, right? So which means that we think that we have the leadership, we have to transfer it. So it's not the case, it's just the other way around. And that's why I think there has to be a mind shift of the professionals or volunteers, or how we work. And that's why a very impactful training is important. Why? Because it ensures the participants to know how to include all social groups. Because often the time, we go with the roadside biasness, so we don't go to the remotest areas, we don't consider the extremely socially vulnerable groups, such as persons with living with HIV/AIDS or other issues in persons with disabilities, etc. And of course, the ethnic minorities or any minorities. Having that skills to make sure that leadership of the processes within the communities is something is always missing. We go with a package of a basket of activities, and we think that this is what it needs to be done. And that's why often the successes are not as expected or as we want to see or as we design, in our intervention. And how do we, promote accountability by all the people involved? If you really do not ensure the capacity through a proper impactful training. I'm again and again saying this because this is something we ensured and we can see the result, particularly the frontline workers, but also it needs to be have a mind shift at the leadership level of any organization or any forum or any network you mentioned. And then how to facilitate that process, because often we don't have the facilitation skills, and we go to the community and we think, okay, you do this, you do that. So that's not the approach. And that's why I just want to put forward as a first point to ensure all the good practices that we are dreaming of, I would say. We haven't been quite successful, probably. There are some good successes, but we are not able to replicate them or even scaling up, across all the practitioners or agencies like us who are working in the sector. So this is what something I would say. I will go quickly on the 3 non-negotiable principles, which is 1, inclusion of all social groups in the community. Number 2 is the community is the what is called the leadership of the community. And the third one is the promotion of accountability. I guess those are so important. Otherwise, it would be the way we see still, we go with the response package and then we leave the community. We don't go back with any post-response or rehabilitation or resilience work. We go to another new area with response and we leave the community. And that's why accountability is very important, how we are doing it, how much we are actually communicating to the communities, etc. I will quickly show that, why it is so important to listen to all the communities. What change do they want, even during the response stage, I would say. We think that at the response, you just go and deliver the products. It's not that. You have to listen to them first. What do they want and how can we build around that, even like within 72 hours of response, I would say. So if the community is rightly engaged, they're strengthened, some improvement in the infrastructures, critical infrastructures, such as access to the safer place for safer evacuation and the access to the critical services, I would say health clinics or schools or markets, etc. in the long term, that will ensure the effective response. And that's how it works. And then what Mr. Saikia was talking about, how you strengthen the government structures. So what we are doing is we actually go with the government structures, which includes various disaster management committees, including cyclone preparedness program or Bangladesh Red Crescent Society volunteers. So the frontline workers, the disaster management structures are strengthened. And then improving all the natural NRM or other protective infrastructures, not like big infrastructures that are possible, and then strengthen the disaster response mechanism within the communities. But what is important here is about collaboration or coordination. That does not happen, no matter how much we talk, even during the response. For example, this time we did, during the devastating floods happened in the northern Bangladesh, we went to a particular area where other 2 agencies were working or responding to the same community with different packages, for example, wash or other things, while we went with the shelter assistance. So the community became more resilient rather than going to another community and doing one small thing and not doing the whole thing. I know that people would also argue that, okay, everybody needs to get something. But to me, do a better job in a small community and go, in a staggering approach, rather than thinking everyone to be part of your one small tiny support during the response. Collaboration definitely helps. It helps us avoiding duplication, leveraging other resources that the way we did this time, standardizing the policies, and of course, collective voice have a stronger impact always. And it definitely increases their capacity directly to engage with various stakeholders, not only with ones. I would just stop here. Few things that we did. We did the savings for resilience for the women's groups where there is no bank, no other agencies, remotest islands. Cash and voucher, we have talked about it many times, and we do it very well because, we still think that community needs this sort of like non-food items or items that are not needed by them. So, why don't you just give cash with your strong monitoring system? Cash empowers the community because it gives them the choice. It gives them the decision-making power. How do they want to spend? What change do they want? So we definitely have established the systems where we do the mobile money transfers, because there are mobile money transfer private sectors are there where you can engage them, and they do the money transfers to the mobile or to the mobile account of the beneficiaries or program participants, and it's very easy and it's highly transparent. Local solutions, as my other colleague was saying, yes. For example, we reduce the cost of Lifebuoy for the fishermen communities by doing it with the underutilized items from the fishing activities. So the Lifebuoys are now costing like $3 instead of $12, and that's communities are their own, making by themselves, and we are promoting local entrepreneurs so that they can make it and use it in their own communities. Creek and Valley is something natural resources, traditional natural resource management thing, which we have been doing for ensuring long-term access to the drinking water. As I said, private sector engagement is very critical in this time when we are all struggling with fund-driven response. And I would say that we have to move out of the fund-driven response to a more long-term rehabilitation or resilience. We need to go with a different approach, particularly engaging the private sectors. And of course, commitment to the core humanitarian standards is something. We still feel that there is a huge gap amongst the humanitarian agencies in terms of protecting the rights and safeguarding the communities. There is still a huge. I don't want to elaborate it now. I don't think there is enough time, but the protection needs, when I'm saying protection needs, which includes their safety, security, rights to the privacy, etc., which is not there yet. We need to go miles ahead of this one. I can share the link for the video on the Lifebuoy so that people can see how it's being done, etc. I don't want to describe it much, but I would say these are the more important ones to ensure the inclusion, because there is strategic exclusion still. Still people are out of our support. Still people are out of our coverage. Why? We should ask ourselves first. So I'll stop here and give you a bit of time what you want to ask. Can I stop? Yeah.
Yeah. Can we come back to the previous screen?
Oh, previous screen? Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I do it?
So, Dr. Stikha, I would like to ask you, like as a media person, so my curiosity is something like I have been covering disasters since a long time. I am born and brought up in Assam, so I have seen floods since a age, like since my childhood. And then there are new avenues of disaster.
Mhm.
So in that way, when a community is not prepared for disaster and sudden disaster hits them, so what is the best way to approach them, and what is the best way to communicate with them in a hope of making them resilient?
Um, as I say, I would not suggest anybody to jump on a charity-based approach. Go with the proper capacitated team. Why I'm again mentioning that's a very critical area we don't focus. Everybody, we think that this is my personal social responsibility, which I don't disrespect. I respect that as a practitioner. I grew up in Assam as well, and lived in a village and crossed the river during my college days, etc. So I saw floods forever in my life. I lost my friends in the river as well. So pre-positioning is the other thing that we all can do, like, preparedness, etc., that you need to work with that community beforehand and then go. Otherwise, collaboration and coordination is highly critical during a response. When we don't know the area, go and and collaborate and go as a group with a proper systematic approach. Otherwise, communities are not asking us. They don't come to us and ask for support. That's one. And second is definitely government. Reaching out to the government and see where the niche area is, where we can collaborate and where we can chip in our support rather than we go by independently. For example, let me give you one. During COVID, we had this cyclone here, Cyclone Bulbul and Amphan. And both the cyclones, we did what government was struggling because community did not want to evacuate until the highest level of signal. Why? Because they were all scared of two risks, double risk. One is the risk of cyclone, but also the risk of COVID. They did not feel safe to go to the cyclone shelters. So then what we did is with the local disaster management committees, we provided the support of cleaning items, hygiene products, cleaned the toilets for 90 cyclone shelters. Within like day and night, the volunteers worked, including the Red Crescent volunteers and the CPP volunteers. And then they, they cleaned it. And communities, and then they went back to the community and asked them, okay, now we clean the shelters, we provided the mats so that they can at least stick to their own families. We provided the mask, hand sanitizer, etc. And then they came. And the transformation happened with the government, like local disaster management committees. They told that we never had ever respectfully welcomed the affected communities like the way we did this time. They would just open the cyclone shelters and let the people go in. But this is something that we thought is an urgent need to ensure the safer evacuation. And that's why it is so important that we don't jump. We take a bit of a back step back, and then decide what is the right approach.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for the insightful way of saying that how communities helps each other in their own way, and why it is not a community-based and it's a community-led initiative. So we also have to think keeping ourselves in their shoes, and that's how the trust building it's a process. So now I'm opening the floor for everyone. So if anyone has any kind of question, we can ask the speaker, and I think they will help you with the answers.
Yeah, is it open now?
Yes.
Yeah, glad to have memories of a lot of things that were said by Mr. Saikia and Madam Ji also. Quite a lot of these are already implemented. Only point is reaching out to the unreached areas. Like if you're talking about especially Assam perspective, a huge amount of work is done in the Brahmaputra area, in the vicinity of Brahmaputra, and which gets affected. I think when we talk about the localization, Barak Valley and many other areas where it's not really well reached, despite last year you had back-to-back two very massive floods and complete disconnection due to landslide, but by both the train, railway, completely disconnected. And so I think that localization has to be really taken to the local community. And two other important aspects. One is that rural health. We actually started first aid and rural basic health programs where all those aspects mentioned should be not only practiced only for the post-disaster, but also should be a normal natural practice. The other thing is logistics. It's a huge logistics issues when you talk about the rural and northeast aspect, where transportation communication is very challenging. Landslides often occur, and artificial price rising. So existing organizations should work on supply chain vendor rating so that they know and they have pre-agreement with it. And on Madam's, this thing is sure, Bangladesh has one of the best cyclone preparedness program. And those days they did not have mobile and things like that. I myself have witnessed CDD doing a grassroots level evacuation programs in the place called Baguda. So some of those traditional things like flags at different stages, even Dholakwala, runner, and talking about radio system, a community level radio. We think about even existing village level communication chain system. These people will trust. What Madam said, yes, many times people do not trust and they don't like to evacuate, leave their property, their livestock. Then PA system. Recently, I went to Manipur. In a village, I saw in the Gao Buddha, they call Gao Buddha, the village head. In his house, there's a high tower and fixed with a PA system. And that really works well when they announce, when the Panchayat head respond to, announce, everybody would trust him, and they will come to a safer side. And manual siren is very powerful. So those things in the pre-existing, practice are already there in community that can be reinstalled. And DRR communication, climate change communication has to be really done with the rural local level community. So I wish all the best. I hope to hear some more inputs and to add to what we are planning in future in the Barak Valley. Thank you. This is Peniel Malakar representing Humanica.
Thank you so much. I just add one point here, Chandrani, also for you, that while we talk about inclusion and what Mr. Malakar was saying, is that we actually train the traditional leaders. We engage the traditional leaders in a very systematic way. We advocated, there was a policy change also happened in Bangladesh in the standing orders of disasters to include the ethnic minorities into the disaster management committees. So there are representation of them into the committees, but they also are they're the most trustworthy people. Local ethnic communities would not evacuate until those people are disseminating that message. So we definitely engage them very strongly, including all the disaster management capacity building initiatives.
And also, ma'am, in the schools. So the DRR communication through schools, and as you mentioned very rightly, the community, the traditional community leadership or their structure of their village communication is very powerful tool to reach out. Thank you.
So anyone else with their question? Anyone want
There
to
is a question in the chat box. Shall I read it out?
Yeah.
Can I go next?
All right.
So, good evening. I am Rambabu, representing Catalyst Management Services, Bangalore. So we have incubated Community Action Collab, formerly known as COVID Action Collab, which is a national level network with more than 350 organizations. Since I think COVID has almost completed now, I think we are shaping it is in a new form, that is Community Action Collab, and also would like to focus on 4 thematic areas, that is health, livelihood, social protection, and also climate action come DRR. So still we are in a transition phase and design phase. So with these 4 thematic areas, we would like to promote resilience interventions to most vulnerable communities. That includes farmers, tribals, fisher folks, women and sex workers, people living with HIVs, and so on and so forth. So I would like to understand, since we are, I think I do not have much experience on DRR. So what are the essential package of services? That is, I can say common minimum program. What are the essential package of services considering these vulnerable communities on climate action and DRR for our better planning and purpose? Thank you. Hope I am audible.
You are.
I don't know if Mr. Tita Sekia wants to go ahead first, but I can definitely say that I cannot recommend first thing. I would suggest go, as I said, go to the community, ask them what do they want, and make your package accordingly. You know, donors are very flexible. I don't think that no donor will say that, no, we don't want something that community wants. And that's my experience personally. So just go there. Don't think, you know, don't make it too many things. Give them the ownership, talk to them, and do what they want. Use your budget accordingly and talk to the donor. Go back to the donor, advocate for communities. That's what the solution is.
There is another question coming from Shahid Khan.
Thank you, ma'am, for permitting me to ask the question. My question is very simple. I mean, I think it would be better if Saikya sir would be able to address, or anybody else also in plan. We have a fantastic framework of the Gram Panchayats all over the country. Of course, ma'am also has spoken about capacity building. I would like to know whether some kind of a framework has been established with the Gram Panchayat in any state or anywhere, whichever part of India, such that we could understand and get as a best practice how the panchayats are involved in the various methods of DRR. Thank
you. I haven't been quite involved in India, to be very honest, for many years, but I definitely started working with Panchayat. I would say that's what we should again use it. You know, we don't need to create a parallel process. If Panchayat has a, I'm sure we advocated way back, I think during 2000 to 2004 when I was in India, that bring that planning process and enter into, that's your entry, that should be our entry point to create the disaster management plan according to, you know, that plan. So I'm sure people or whoever here from Sphere India gang, I'm sure they all know about it, that how, you know, the village planning process of the panchayat can be actually an entry point for disaster risk management planning. And just do it. And this is exactly what we also do it here, like a risk reduction action plan. And then, you know, it's being submitted to different, I know that there is always a question of budget allocation. There is no specific budget which is very specified for disaster risk reduction planning plans, but there are departments which have the funding, which can be allocated. If the plan is actually shared, I go back to the coordination and collaboration area, like, which is so critical. Unless communities are empowered, if they don't know there at that point. What we do is we go to the panchayat, make the plan come back. But that's what we need to ensure, that that collaboration happens at the planning stage when community negotiate their demands with various departments. And that's how the funding can be accessible by the communities.
Any more questions?
Community should have capacity to deal with, and we have proved in the past in Orissa and elsewhere also, community responders can play a role in keeping the community or protecting from the impact of this. Of course, I agree with Snigdha madam that government is expected to be the responsible body for taking care of the community's needs. But often this is not fully implemented or happening. So that's why we need to build the capacity of the community with needed skill training, so that they are the immediate responders by the time, and these bodies or the community bodies accepted and linked with the panchayat system, so that the government will approve, and government will have the mutual trust and mutual sharing of responsibilities. We can build a very well resilient community. So this way we can address the needs of the disasters after, and also to certain extent minimize the impact of the disasters. Thank you. Sorry, I'm traveling. Sometime there will be an interruption in the internet.
Okay, no problem, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Shubhra Jha from Chennai. Good afternoon to the panelists. Good to see Aniruddha Das, Snigdha and others after ages. Okay, so I was managing one program called COVID, post-COVID, with the support of UNICEF, and I'm working with an organization called Mission Samriddhi based in Chennai. We are working in 5 states of India. So just I heard one of the participants asking about how we can involve the Gram Panchayats in preparing the community and make them resilient. So I would just like to share what we did in Project COVID actually. So we came up with an idea of risk-informed GPDP plan. All of us are aware that in India, we have something called Gram Panchayat Development Plan, that they sit, the Panchayat people, the representatives, the community member, they sit together and they plan it for what are the works they are going to do. So what we have done is we have mobilized and motivated community people to participate, have an active part in it, identify the risks, the resources within the community, and bring it in the GPDP plan, so that the GPDP plan is risk informed, so that what are the risks they have, what are the disasters they have, what are the seasonal hazards they have, they will identify it, and they will specify some of the groups who will be responsible for looking at, monitoring it, so that it is performed on time. So I think that is a very good thing, something that I think that need to be replicated, and it had come up so well. We were working in 5 states from Assam to Tamil Nadu, and we have made quite a few new risk-informed GPDP plan, and we have reviewed some of them that was already in the place. So I think that's the best way to come up with. Thank you so much. I just thought of sharing my experience.
Thank you, Shubhra.
Good to see you, Snigdha.
Yeah, same here.
So we are going out of time. So I think we have to close the question answer round here, and would like Dr. Aniruddha come forward and give us, give the speakers and the participant a vote of thanks.
Thank you. I say the participants' enthusiasm, and I was not very sure that whether we can finish it on time. But the thing is that, yeah, the moderator and the team, those who have been working, they are very scheduling it in a manner so that we can finish it up on time. So I, on behalf of Climate Action Resource Network, and this particular session, this is session 2, is being facilitated by the main secretariat of the Climate Action Resource Network. It is PRISM in West Bengal, India. So on behalf of CARN-AP, I would like to thank everyone, all the guest speakers, Dr. Snigdha Chakraborty, Mr. Tirtho Shoikia, and the moderator, Ms. Chandrani Sinha, and all the participants. So, and also on behalf of one of the executive council members of the executive committee members of Sphere India, I would like to thank you all again. My only this thing is just I will take a few seconds. Yeah, lots of questions were raised, lots of suggestions also came. Shubhra finally talked about GPDP, and GPDP is a government of India. If people from India, they are actually following, you will see that there is a government regulation on GPDP, but I would request you all to follow the GPDP level. The modules are prepared by UNDP long back in 2003, and which are circulated in different languages. And because I can say, because I was part of translating this in Bengali for Tripura and West Bengal, so please follow that. And government later on realized that Gram Panchayat needs to be involved, and that plan has to be given this thing, and that is very, very much important. And on behalf of the Climate Action Resource Network, I would request you all to please join our next session on 23rd of February. That is the third session, where the initial guest speaker is Professor Dr. Sheikh Tohidul Islam from Jahangirnagar University. He is the director of Institute of Remote Sensing and GIS, and moderator will be Dr. Papia Majumdar. She is from Leeds University, UK. So some other speakers, guest speaker, 1 or 2 will definitely join. We are looking for them. So on 23rd. So I am requesting you all to please make this Sphere India Academy sessions a successful one. Thank you so much.
All right. I think we are almost coming to the end of the session. So thank you so much, Dr. Anuradha, for that vote of thanks, and also to our moderator for wonderfully moderating sessions, and also to the panelists.
Thank you so much.
For all the expertise that that you have shared here. So I feel like this event was an excellent opportunity to engage with the community of like-minded individuals to share your ideas, experience, perspectives, like basically the grassroots level experiences to build new partnerships. So I hope as me, everybody also enjoyed the session and found the discussions very informative and thought-provoking. We'll be making a report of the session and sending it to all of you meanwhile. And also, as Dr. Anuradha have mentioned, we have an upcoming session on the use of science and technology in DRR. And once again, thank you all. And please do reach out to us if you have any questions. Again, thank you all. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you very much. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.